Joining us now to discuss classified information, former Republican Congressman Will Hurd, who served as a former undercover CIA officer, and also with us, Valerie Plame, who was an undercover CIA officer whose identity was infamously revealed by the Bush White House. Thanks to both of you for being here. So, Valerie, let me start with you. We now know more about what information the classified documents contained. And very specifically, Jack Smith writes that the unauthorized disclosure of these classified documents could put at risk the national security of the United States, foreign relations, the safety of the United States military, and human sources, and the continued viability of sensitive intelligence collection methods. That's a direct quote. Your response, Valerie.
Good to be with you, Jake. What happened today is nothing less than a seismic event in the history of our country. Nothing like this has ever happened. And frankly, the U.S. credibility is at stake. The world is watching how we proceed with this. The indictment that has just been unsealed, and we understand more of the details inside, is absolutely stunning in its detail. We knew that there were classified documents, but not the specificity, nuclear secrets. And what this is telling us is that Trump clearly broke the law. I can tell you that as a CIA officer, if I had left even one piece of classified paper on my desk at the end of the day, I would have faced severe consequences. And the president, I think one way to make America great again is to make sure that no one is above the law.
Will Hurd, former CIA officer as well, included in the indictment are photographs of the boxes, clearly insecure, in a bathroom, on a ballroom stage, laying around on the floor after they fell in a storage room. What was your reaction as somebody who used to help gather such information as a CIA officer?
Well, my first reaction was, if I had 15 boxes in my house, I wouldn't be talking to you, number one. Number two, the thing that's to me was most damning, and I read the indictment, it's the text messages between the staff. It's the communications between Trump and his staff. Donald Trump willingly took classified documents from the White House. He knew he had them. He then lied about having them, and then he tried to get his staffers to lie about them, and then he tried to lie to his lawyers about this. This is absolutely outrageous, and what is most frustrating to me is that this is someone who is spitting in the face of the thousands of men and women who put themselves in harm's way every single day, who's away from their families every single day in order to protect our country, and he's just spitting in their face. And to me, that's despicable.
Valerie, you know better than almost anyone how sensitive U.S. classified material can be. You and I have talked about your fears about what might have happened to people that you talked to in the field after the Bush White House revealed your identity. How few people would even have access to stuff that deals with nuclear secrets, do you think?
Very few. I agree wholeheartedly with Will, because what's at stake here is nothing less than the lives of Americans and U.S. national security. Trump has acted in an utterly reckless and cavalier fashion with these documents. We can only speculate on why he did this. It doesn't really matter, though. The law is the law, and no one should be above it. Sources and methods is what we protect at all cost, both for our friends and our allies. And he has treated this in such a reckless, despicable fashion that I can only hope that the Department of Justice and the FBI just follow the facts and fully prosecute this.
Will, are you supported, you're a former Republican congressman, are you supported so many of the Republican presidential candidates, with the exceptions of Asa Hutchinson and Chris Christie, but all the others are attacking the Justice Department, defending Trump, and your former leader, Kevin McCarthy, is out there talking about this isn't justice, et cetera?
Look, regardless of what DOJ does or doesn't do in other cases, it doesn't make what Donald Trump did acceptable. And whether Donald Trump is convicted or not convicted by a jury, and yes, nobody is above the law, and you're innocent until proven guilty. The evidence that is provided in this affidavit, in this indictment letter, is proof that this guy should not be president of the United States, and we shouldn't be defending him. If the GOP is supposed to be the party of personal responsibility, then we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And for those that haven't read that, I would tell them, go in and read it and see what happened. And it's outrageous, the kind of behavior that we saw. And here's what's also going to happen. Do you think, yes, maybe this strengthens his supporters, but do you think the 6 out of 10 Americans that do not want to see Donald Trump run for re-election, that are independents and conservative Democrats, you think this is going to make them want to vote for the guy, right? Like this shouldn't be about winning elections, but this is someone who shouldn't be the standard bearer of our party. So
just a quick question. It's the same question for both of you, and that is, the indictment alleges that Donald Trump showed at least 2 documents to different people, Mark Meadows, autobiographers, and somebody that worked for a Trump super PAC, I believe. We also know that Mar-a-Lago is not a secure environment. We know that there have been at least 2 Chinese nationals that trespassed. We know about this other con woman pretending to be a Rothschild who got into Mar-a-Lago. Do you think, just as people who used to engage in this tradecraft, do you think it's likely that spies got into Mar-a-Lago and saw some of this stuff, Valerie?
Well, we know that's a private club and that we have no real understanding of who can come and go. Clearly, it's not secured. The ballroom, the boxes of classified material in the bathroom, it's crazy making. Knowing what we know now, in addition to all the details in the indictment as this unfolds, is there any question now that Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to the United States of America? And for any American to continue to pretend otherwise is simply unrealistic.
Will Hurd, I know my question is speculative, but I mean, what's your suspicion?
Sure. Look, it's hard for me to say, whether they were vulnerable. Here's what I do know. If Donald Trump would have given these documents back, we wouldn't be in this situation. My read of the charging documents is he's not being charged for any of the documents that he had and he returned. He's only being charged for the ones that he lied about having, and we found out after the fact. So we wouldn't be having these conversations if Donald Trump wasn't being a jerk and would have just given the documents back when he was asked, similar to what Mike Pence did, right? And so we wouldn't be here if that was the case.
Former Congressman Will Hurd, Republican of Texas, Valerie Plame, thank you to both of you for being here. Thank you to both of you for serving in our clandestine services. We really appreciate it.